Okay, this is Russell Dobular sitting in for Jimmy Dore, who is performing in El Paso, Texas on Friday. So go check him out. All right, so Columbia University has been having quite a time trying to balance its desire to maintain its Zionist donor base and not violate the civil rights of its students in a blatantly open way. So how will they navigate that? Well, Columbia cancels in-person classes after days of pro-Palestinian protests.
Now remote work is okay again.
Yep, they're back to COVID times.
They brought the masks and everything. Didn't matter.
Didn't matter. I am telling you, man. A lot of people, they beat up on the Zers. Yo, these kids got so fucked in so many ways. Columbia University announced all classes would be virtual Monday as Passover begins, following days of pro-Palestinian protests on campus. Big-name colleges have been cracking down more aggressively on pro-Palestinian protests, which they say are getting increasingly intense and disruptive. I thought we were anti-colonization.
Wow.
I thought we were anti-colonization. Is that how we're like anti-slavery? Because there's lots of actual slavery happening now. Not in 1860. Now. Are we doing anything about that? Are we doing anything about that? No, we're not.
Dude, peaceful but fiery was BLM, and you can't even say go back to Poland to someone with a Polish last name. That's a bomb. That's the equivalent of starving people to death in Gaza.
Well, especially, I was talking about that. With my experience, I heard somebody say that at a protest I was at. He was responding to Zionists screaming, there is no Palestine.
Right.
What imaginary country you going to go back to?
Like
and
he
said, you're from Poland.
Remember the MAGA hat kid in the Black Israelites? Speaking of Jews.
Yeah. Columbia President Manoush Shafiq called the New York Police Department last week on pro-Palestinian activists who set up an encampment again immediately after. Good for you kids, man. NYPD arrested more than 100 people after Shafiq requested their removal. Quote, students across an array of communities have conveyed fears for their safety, and we have announced additional actions we are taking to address security concerns, Shafiq said in a statement. The decibel of our disagreements has only increased in recent days. She added that individuals who are not affiliated with Columbia have come to the campus to pursue their own agendas.
AIPAC?
This is what they love to do. They love to go with the AOC pulled this shit, which Jose was fucking with her a little too much.
Yeah, right.
People are coming from outside the community. What does that mean?
You can go.
Where are they from? Bora Bora? They're from fucking America, right? You're in Congress, right?
Didn't they say go to the Supreme Court justices' homes because of the Roe v. Wade thing and go ahead and be disruptive at their home?
They did.
Of Supreme Court justices.
They did.
But now it's not cool. You can't. Oh, wow.
Well, this is okay, and I've looked into this. Okay, so what they're conflating is you have protests going on outside the gates of Columbia, which you have a right to do as an American. They're not infiltrators. You don't assume because you see a protest outside Columbia. To get in Columbia, you need a student ID. You can't even. I was sick last week, or I would have gone down there.
Right.
But I couldn't have gotten in anyway. They weren't even letting you in with a press pass. That's why if you see the shots of these tents, you would see all of the news agencies with their cameras set up.
Yeah.
You're not seeing that because they didn't let, even with a press pass, they weren't letting people in. So when they're saying people from outside, that's total bullshit. You're talking about people protesting on the other side of the gates. That's not the people who were in the tents who were removed.
If we're going to send all of our money to Israel to kill all these people, regardless of how any of us feel about it, should I be allowed to say whatever the fuck I want about it? At least that?
Well,
if I got to pay for it.
Well, no, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite, because they got to keep stuffing the money in the pockets of the defense contractors.
They're going to get it anyway, whether I agree or not. So why can't at least have my...
That's true.
Hollow protests?
They fear the return of democracy to these benighted lands. Protesters over the weekend, seemingly unaffiliated with the university, were accused of celebrating Hamas and targeting Jewish students, the New York Times reported. At Yale University, police also arrested pro-Palestinian protesters Monday morning. A large group of Columbia faculty and staff held a walkout and news conference on Monday afternoon criticizing the university's handling of the protests. Quote, "I understand that many are experiencing deep moral distress and want Columbia to help alleviate this by taking action," Shafik said. "We should be having serious conversations about how Columbia can contribute." Now, she really went to her platitude finishing school, didn't she?
That's what college is for. Platitude. Yes. It's platitude finishing school.
Talk about a word salad. Shafik denounced intimidating and harassing behavior, as well as anti-Semitic language in her announcement. Students who do not live on campus were asked not to come to the university on Monday. Harvard University restricted access to the Harvard Yard, a center of the school, until Friday afternoon, the Harvard Crimson reported. An announcement posted at the Yard's entrance gates warned of disciplinary action against students who bring in unauthorized tents or tables, like at Columbia's encampment. On Friday, students and affiliates held a solidarity protest at Harvard, per the Crimson. Shafik testified in a congressional hearing on Wednesday over anti-Semitism on Columbia's campus since October 7th. The hearing was similar to one late last year that led to the ouster of two Ivy League University presidents, Harvard's Claudine Gay and the University of Pennsylvania's Liz McGill. And that is exactly why she threw on the knee pads for Rick Allen, who asked her if she wants Columbia cursed by God. And, and the rest of the people in Congress.
You want to get Mehdi Hassan?
Yes, exactly. She doesn't want to lose her job, and that clearly is primary
what punks
for her.
These people? Everyone's a punk. I can't lose my
just disgusting
prestigious job at a thing that I got to tell you I don't respect at all. Most people don't respect.
How do you live with yourself? How do you live with yourself? These people don't have that last inch that they won't give up.
No, everything is external.
Yep.
That's why kids got to be on puberty blockers. No validation comes from you. It's all from everyone else all the time, and I control the psychic space, and you will believe in my truth as if it was Jesus Christ to you. That's what they demand.
Columbia President Manoush Shafik sets deadline for anti-Israel protesters to reach agreement to dismantle encampment. So that was going to be midnight last night, but then they extended it.
They made a
Columbia extends deadline for negotiations to clear campus encampment. Columbia University early Wednesday extended by 48 hours a deadline for talks on dismantling pro-Palestinian protesters' encampments on the campus grounds after a midnight deadline issued the night before raised the prospect of further turmoil at the Ivy League institution. The university has been in talks with student organizers behind protests against the Israel-Gaza war, part of a wave of demonstrations at colleges across the country that have led to a spate of arrests to clear an encampment on the west lawn of Columbia's Morningside Heights campus. If the discussions are not successful, Columbia President, I'm not even saying that name again, Warren Tuesday, in a statement, Columbia will have to consider alternative options for clearing the west lawn and restoring calm to campus.
Are they going to starve them? They're going to do actual Gaza things to them?
They're going to bring in a cyber truck.
Don't make me bring the truck.
Don't make me call Elon. Mahmoud Khalil, a Columbia student who is part of the negotiations with the administration, said he was not aware of any police presence on the campus after the initial deadline at midnight Tuesday expired. In a statement provided to the Washington Post, Columbia said it was extending the deadline by 48 hours in light of important progress that had been made with the organizers. The student protests agreed to dismantle and remove a significant number of tents, committed to ensuring that only Columbia students will participate in the demonstrations, Shit. Cornell just lost the one place in America he can make a speech and have a captive audience, and have taken steps to ensure no discriminatory or harassing language is used at the encampment, according to the statement. Shortly after midnight, Columbia student negotiators had released a statement alleging that the university administration had threatened to call the National Guard and the New York police if its demands were not met. New York Governor Kathy Hochul said earlier Tuesday that she had no plans to call in the National Guard in response to the campus protesters, according to local media. Her office did not immediately respond to queries about whether Columbia had made such a request. More than 100 people protesting the war in Gaza were arrested and charged with trespassing at Columbia last week after Shafik summoned police to the campus in what she described as an extraordinary step to keep the campus safe. The move to
shut up.
Well, and they're charging kids who go to the school with trespassing. They're not trespassing. They're students at the school. They have a right to be there.
Danny Shaw's in a tent right now with him. I've been texting with him, yeah.
The move to call the police and suspend protesting students was criticized by student leaders and human rights groups. Pro-Palestinian protests at colleges have demanded that their universities divest from corporations doing business with Israel or profiting off the war in Gaza. At Columbia, protesters have also asked the university to end a dual degree program with Tel Aviv University. The arrests and suspensions at Columbia spurred similar protests at institutions such as New York University, Yale, and the University of California at Berkeley. University administrators have also faced intense scrutiny from Congress. The Republican-led House Committee on Education and the Workforce has grilled Shafik and the leaders of other universities over actions taken to combat anti-Semitism on campus. House Speaker Mike Johnson will visit the Columbia campus on Wednesday, his office announced.
That'll help.
Okay, so what I want to know, do they mean today?
Yeah, he was there today. I saw some stuff about that. I haven't taken a thorough look because I've been doing shows since 2 o'clock. But yeah, he was there today.
Read the People magazine, the profile of him. That's what I was going to think about, his covenant marriage, which is like you're not allowed to get divorced for the first 3 years.
Do you wear magic underwear like the Mormons?
Dude, it's that's less crazy than what I'm reading in this covenant marriage thing. But it's in People, so it's not a thing like this guy's crazy. It's a thing selling him to you.
Does she have to like render pork fat, that kind of thing?
They're not allowed to divorce for the first 3 years of marriage. It's called covenant. A marriage is a covenant, I thought.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to divorce, and I'm guessing that's a breeding thing because most couples don't divorce till after 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
So it don't make any sense. So he's I don't know what creepy thing he was programmed in Louisiana. It's bizarre that he would be sent to Columbia to this protest. Like, what would be the purpose of that?
Well, he, as we have dubbed him, he is the glory hole of the house. Yeah. So whatever use they want to put him to,
you know,
he's going to open wide.
I think it ain't just a metaphor. I think you hit on something more than you know.
Yeah.
He's probably setting up under the beer pong table. You know, maybe they got a party. Maybe that's why he's there.
Go eat out Manoush's pussy, Mike. See if you can calm me the fuck down. But I'm in a covenant marriage. Mike, I don't give a shit what you're in. None of that shit's real.
We are.
Now go there and eat that fucking pussy. Hey, Harry Potter, get to munching.
Oh, boy, are we putting the editor to work today.
Leave in that gold. Fuck Mike Johnson.
So at first they said they were gonna go remote for the rest of the week during Passover, but then they subsequently announced classes will be virtual for the rest of the year. Now I am assuming they mean the school year ending in May, not the year ending in December. This comes after Robert Kraft, owner of the Patriots, pulled funding from the university. Oh,
this is an effective protest, actually.
Well, it is because it's
it's
spreading now to other universities.
The Ivy League is where the deep state, all the people go to. That's where they go to. You know.
Well, this is. I mean, it's you talk about the trans thing rhymes with the Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
This definitely rhymes with the Vietnam era. Right down to the protests being aimed at getting the universities to divest of their involvement in the military-industrial complex.
I mean, good luck with that.
And the war in Vietnam. It's exactly the same demand.
And what about when George W. Bush had those recovered memories of his satanic skull and bones ritual he had to do?
Patriots owner Robert Kraft says he's not comfortable donating to Colombia amid protests.
I'm not comfortable looking at his fucking face, I got to be honest with you. Look at that. It looks like... What is that?
Patriots owner Bob Kraft stoking reaction by making a public show of pulling of his support from Colombia. A reminder that he tried to sell a Super Bowl audience that his AIPAC politics were aligned with the goals of the civil rights movement.
Oh my God. How ironic to own the Patriots and be in the pocket of AIPAC.
Well, that was very much like the other glory hole of the house, Richie Torres there, who fucking who went on MLK Day to a Jewish synagogue on the Upper East Side to compare the struggle of MLK to the founding of Israel.
Oh, Richie Torres, I remember when I first saw him on Bill Maher, and I couldn't believe it. I was looking, his name stuck in my head because he's a minor whatever. Yeah. He was such a phony piece of shit. All I ever think of is that guy, Madison Cawthorn, the one that was in the wheelchair, that said a respected conservative asked him to come to a party, to some sex party. And I remember on Breaking Points, Saga was like, oh, come on. And I was like, why don't you believe him? Because he's in a wheelchair? Well, I'll bet that makes it real hot for them.
I mean, sure.
That's Madison Cawthorn. He blew it. Richie Torres is getting that work, and Mike Johnson, he's been getting that work. He goes to all the parties. He's got a covenant with his mouth to some balls.
Anything, Keaton?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they teach at these schools the history of protest movements, the history of civil disobedience, nonviolent resistance, and the virtue of all of those things. Right. I mean, in the college courses I took, with the few college courses I took, we learned about that stuff as if it was a good thing, right?
Right.
And now they're forced to admit, when push comes to shove, listen, kids, I got news for you. We are still the villains of the story. And we have to play that role because otherwise we don't get to live here in America with all this cool shit and this money. And so you gotta take it easy, right? We teach you the history of a struggle for justice in order to bear witness to it, in order to rid you with guilt about ascending through the system. You're supposed to carry that guilt with you, and that guilt is what you invoke whenever you feel like you're not doing enough. No, you did enough. You went to school and you learned what an evil empire you live in. Now, straighten your tie and go to work and come home and shut the fuck up about any actual social justice you want to see in the world. That's what they're telling the kids. That's what Scott Galloway said on Morning Joe. Hey, what's with all the fuss about the killing people? We killed the Japanese, we killed the Iraqis, we killed the Afghanis. Come on, this is what we do. Are you really going to make a thing out of it now? We teach you about it so you learn about it. So you carry it with you at all times. That's the burden you bear. Now bear it and shut up and do as you're told. That's what they're actually telling you at college. That's the point of college. That's the point of an Ivy League education.
That's right.
Especially, they teach it to you especially strong there because you are going to be especially culpable in the crimes of your empire because you are the leaders of tomorrow. That's what you are. And so that's the message they're sending loud and clear. And the question is, will the kids fold? Will the kids be a Mike Johnson in the end? Right? Will they say, oh, I guess you're right. I guess there's nothing I can do. Man. You got me. Or will they stick to it? That's really the question. It's up to them. And that's why they should be supported 100%. Because the fact that these sons and daughters of the upper classes are doing this is especially threatening in the eyes of the upper classes, because these are the kids they're going to pass the ball to. And if they're not willing to catch the ball and run with it, then what becomes of this system we've built? They can't answer that. And that's why they have to shut this down. But are they going to be able to shut this down and maintain any a premise of integrity, any supposition of academic integrity? No, I don't think so, but we'll see.
Well, that's it. They didn't teach them. This is the lesson they're learning now, which you're
supposed to intuit it.
But what they taught them was that was the past, and those things have been redressed. And the only things that have not been redressed is diversity. We need to diversify the ruling class that you're a member of. We need to address racism in the human heart, very much like original sin, or the war on terror, unresolvable pursuit, right? You need to stamp out this sin. But those things from the Vietnam era, that's over. That's in the past. And also, winners take all. Anand Giridharadas, he really got into this, how the corporations infiltrated the universities. Mm-hmm. They learned their lesson in the 60s and the 70s.
Yep.
And they turned the social justice impulse towards, hey, you got to make social justice scalable. So you want to do a few years at McKinsey to learn how things work.
Yeah. From inside the system.
And you have to give micro loans to people. You can't just give them aid. You have to give them micro loans. Yeah. So they really infiltrated and took the kind of people who in past generations would have become political activists, and they rooted all of that impulse into becoming corporate goons or deep state bureaucrats. So they taught them, yes, no, slavery and colonization. We used to do that stuff. We're not in favor of that stuff anymore. And this happening with Israel now is very inconvenient. Very few people, particularly young people, are able to live without a sense of moral justification. You have to tell people a story that allows them to get up in the morning and believe they're the good guys. Even if it's total bullshit, they've got to believe something. So the story they were told was that you are not like those racist, misogynist, homophobic, transphobic, sexist people of the past. And neither are we. We've evolved past that. You know who's like that? The MAGA people, the white working class. Those people are like that. And it's your job to overcome those people and banish them from the public square so that good can triumph. And then a settler colonial state decided to commit a genocide against a bunch of people they held in apartheid conditions for decades, and you're backing it. And it shattered the whole moral justification of their entire existences. And that is ripping this apart in a way that we haven't seen since the Vietnam era. There was a very similar clash between reality and the myth that they had been taught. Those kids grew up on post-war America. We're the good guys. We beat the Nazis. And then they saw us killing peasants, poor peasants in Vietnam, and it created a very similar cognitive dissonance and a very similar generational conflict with elite kids. Columbia University was one of the main focal points of those Vietnam protests. They were shutting down that campus all the time. In regards to what you were saying, Keaton, about whether they would sell out, or I think that was you, Kurt, about whether they would change. It's sad as it is to think about it. These MSNBC libs that we decry, the older ones, they were those kids at Columbia who were shutting down the campus.
You know what the mistake was?
That's who those people were.
You know what the design flaw of the Cybertruck was? Because they've infantilized these kids way longer. See, back in the 60s, you were like legal at 15 or something to go get married or go be in a commune or group sex, whatever the hell. But these kids are kids till they're in their 30s because of how these greedy motherfuckers rig the economy so they can't have stuff. So these are babies in their head forever. They can't buy a fucking house. They can't pay their school loans. Right. So the greed of these morons blew up in their fucking faces with their dumb kids that they tried to half transition. It's a really beautiful. I said it October 7th.
Well, no,
I said woke was dead October 7th because the thing you just said,
Right.
that it created also, don't forget Ukraine. I've been hearing how bad Putin is. And I remember when we covered Putin blowing up some shit where Ukraine was hiding stuff behind civilians and they were condemning Russia for sending missiles. And I go, they're hiding in civilian buildings. That's very Hamas of them. I just made an offhanded comment. Well, it turns out it's really hard after you've been talking about this evil to talk about the most moral army in the world doing the same fucking thing.
Exactly. But they'll still
well,
say
it is, I think, generally, really true what you said, and I think that is a big reason why these kids are less likely to sell out, because they have nothing to sell out to. Like, there's nothing in it for them.
You
right?
Didn't give them anything.
Right.
Now on the other hand, but I would say and that is true, I think, broadly speaking, when it comes to these Ivy League kids, these are kids on the inside track. Like, these kids are going to get the payday. A lot of them already have it. A lot of them are just here because mom and dad went to Yale as also, right? So they do have something more to lose than like kids who are at like a SUNY school or public school, right? So like that's what kind of makes this situation kind of unique. It's also what puts them in a spot where they can do these protests. We talked about this on our show last night. Like, it's easier for kids in the Ivy Leagues to do these kinds of protests because when the cops come in, they're a lot less likely to bash the heads in of a kid at
Right.
Yale than they are of a poor working class kid.
That's why I
right?
like
You
these
bash
ones.
the kid. Yeah, right. You bash a rich kid's head and you get sued for that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that puts these kids in a spot where they are more able to push the limits of the system because they have more to fall back on. And so that's encouraging.
All right, Misha, to you.
Hey, get this. So we all know that the mainstream news media is not reliable. How can you trust them when they've never told you the truth about Russiagate, Ukraine, COVID, lockdowns, anything? That's where our sponsor, we have a new sponsor, Ground News, comes in handy. Ground News is an app and a website. And what they do is they gather related articles from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. So it's not, they don't generate the news, they compile the news, and then they give you the visual breakdown of the news outlets and tell you if the source has a political bias, and if it does, what's the political bias, and how reliable that the reporting is, and who owns them. So it's super helpful and transparent. Check this out. So like if you search Russia-Ukraine, search Russia-Ukraine war, and you'll see how it's covered. Here we see 111 total news sources. 18 of them are left-leaning, 9 are right-leaning, and 27 of them are centrist. The bias distribution is 50% center, and it even shows their logos along with their factuality and ownership. So this is a pretty helpful, dare I say, use an old-timey term, this is a neat website. So this is a good way to do your own research. So you get there, you see that they help you by seeing what the bias is, by who owns these news outlets, but they compiles all different kinds of sources around one news story. So it gets you access to independent and international perspectives, not just nationalist sources with the same political agenda. It helps you find the discrepancies in how certain topics are covered and shows you how corporate agendas can influence the news you read. Sounds a lot like this show. Sounds like this website does what this show does. Sounds nice. So if you want to see it for yourself, go to ground.news/JD. Ground.news/JD. Use the link below, and we're going to get you 40% off unlimited access. Go to ground.news/JD, and we're going to get you 40% off unlimited access. Think critically about the news you consume.
Isn't it swell? The memes make themselves. They found a rabbi hole, tunnels and all. There's Jews in the walls. Isn't it bliss? The rabbinical grace soiling the mattresses. Well, let me tell you. If I were Rabbi Shmuley and diddle 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 digga digga diddle diddle dum, all day long I'd diddle little bums. If I were a Shmuley man, I'd peddle all my dildos, dreidel dildos, selling dildos with my daughter and her mum. If I were a Jewish Shmuley man, I'd be digging with a dildo in my bum. I'd wear a grotesque nose and go grab some goyim right on the nipple with a pinch. A Shabbos lap dance brace for the youngest mensch.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit